here are some basic questions that you can find in the FDD. So, you don't want to really go asking the franchisor these questions because it's in the FDD, and you can just go in there and easily find it, right? And save everyone the time. You want to make sure that you're asking good questions and not lazy questions, right? Lazy questions are one that you could just easily look up and find. You want to ask the questions that provide some deeper insight. So, uh, things to look in the FDD. How long have you been in business, right? Pretty obvious one. Not just how long have they been in the business, but how long have they been franchising and how long have they been in business? Because there are a lot of franchises these days where the business maybe only operated for like a year, and then they franchised. There are franchises that the business itself operated, the corporate operated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units or territories for 10 years, 15 years before they ever started franchising. You think about the importance of that question. Well, who's going to have things more figured out? Someone that is just started their business a year or two ago and then started franchising, or someone that started 10 or 15 years ago? And so it may seem like something silly, but the reality is, um, things are learned over time. Nothing can beat time compounded, right? So, not to say that a new franchise isn't a good option. I'm just saying you need to know what's important to you in the process. If you're saying, "Hey, I want most of these things to be figured out. I don't want you guys to be building the plane while we're flying," then you want to know to make sure to go to a franchise that's been around a long time, right? You want to know how financially strong is the franchise company, and that's in the FDD. They show their profit and loss and their balance sheet. I believe it's in item 23. My memory serves me well. So you want to know how financially strong there is. Some franchisors are publicly traded, some are owned by private equity companies, and some are just bootstrapping it, right? So you need to know. You need to know how strong financially is that franchisor. You want to know how many locations they've opened and closed. So in the FDD, in item 20, you will be able to see how many that they've opened and closed each year for the last few years. And then you'll be able to see what their net growth is, meaning if they've opened 20 and closed 10, they've opened a net 10. But if they've closed 20 and opened 10, then they have a net 10 uh, that they've closed. And so this gives some powerful insight into what's going on. I mean, if you, as an example, my wife and I right now are looking at a franchise. We're looking at a resale franchise to acquire, and it's a pretty big franchise system. And they have a lot of franchisees. They have almost 400 franchisees in that specific brand. And I'm looking through the FDD and I'm seeing, wow, there are only 2 to 3 locations closing a year. 2 to 3. That's it. Um, and so it, in that perspective, it's like, okay, they're doing pretty well. And there's always a story why they're closing. It doesn't mean it's the franchisor's fault. Things change with in people's lives. Maybe people aren't good operators. But there was a franchise that we were looking at about 6 to 8 months ago. Granted, it was in the fitness space, but they had just been closing like 30, 40, 50 locations a year. And so at some point it's like, okay, I got to question the decision making of that franchise and the way that they're operating. Cause yeah, I know it was COVID and it was challenging for fitness, but that was just too big of a red flag for me. So you want to be able to see those things in the FDD, as well as initial cost and investment fees, royalties, and average sales per location. So some people say, hey, I don't like this franchise because there's too many fees. Well, the reality is, you're going to pay royalties. You're going to pay royalties, contribute to a marketing fund. Maybe a franchise is not for you then if you don't want to pay the fees. But what I would recommend is if you like a franchise in a specific industry or category, right? Let's say like one point we had a client that he knew he wanted to have a water and fire restoration business. So he was looking at 5-6 different water and fire restoration brands at the same time. One of the reasons why he came to work with us, because he was overwhelmed, struggling with analysis paralysis, just couldn't figure out how to narrow it down between the 5 or 6. And we helped walk him through it, and he was able to successfully make that purchase. Actually, we have his video testimonial on our website. We have like 30 of them. Maybe by the time you watch this, we'll have even more. But the way you'll be able to compare against fees is look at different brands and then that do the same thing and then compare what their fees are and their royalties are. Usually you'll find they're overall the same, but then you can make sure if that's something that's really important to you, then you make sure you pick one that it is in alignment with what's important to you. What I would suggest though is like price means nothing in absence of value. So as an example, I would hands down choose a franchise that has a 1% higher royalty if their support is that much better, if their system is that much better, if they have, that much more brand awareness in the marketplace overall. So the question is really, what are you getting in return for the fees or the royalties that you're paying? You definitely want to know average sales per location. That's in item 19 in the FDD. Super important, right? Maybe like that could help you not waste your time with the franchise if the item 19 shows that, like if you're looking at a retail location and the average sales is not over, $600,000 or $700,000, I wouldn't waste my time, because it's in a retail model. It's hard to make money if you're not, doing more than $500,000 a year, especially with, when you factor in, you got like a loan on the business or something like that. Usually want to see a 2-to-1 sales to investment ratio, meaning if it costs $400,000 to get the business open, you want to see that the average sales are twice as high as that. So the average sales being $800,000. If you enjoyed this short clip from the podcast, you can check out another short clip right here. Or if you want to watch the full episode of this podcast, you can watch that here. And remember, knowledge is not power. It's applied knowledge that's power. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.